The market for data on individual consumers and users is red hot, but several companies have also been caught red-faced and red-handed, using their clients' data in dubious ways. The most notorious of these potential abuses came to light in the aftermath of the 2016 U.S. presidential election.
On elections, you're right that in 2016 we were on our back foot in terms of preventing Russia from attempting to interfere in our elections.
But it was many years in the making. In 2007, an application called My Personality was uploaded to Facebook, which had launched its social media website 3 years prior. The quiz app, created by Cambridge University researcher David Stilwell, not only gathered respondents' answers, it also collected some of their personal data. About 2/5 of respondents agreed to share information from their Facebook profiles, generating a database that contained information about the backgrounds and preferences of 6 million people over the course of 5 years. 2 years after My Personality's collection efforts ended, another app called This Is My Life was uploaded to Facebook. Although it was created by Cambridge University researcher Alexander Kogan, the app wasn't made strictly for academic purposes. Inspired by My Personality, Kogan originally hoped that any data gathered by his app could be used in a partnership using a model developed by fellow Cambridge colleague Michael Kaczynski. Kogan proposed that Kaczynski license his analytical model to a United Kingdom marketing company called SCL. Kaczynski refused Kogan's proposal, however, so Kogan took his app to SCL and created his own model for interpreting the data. SCL later merged with American hedge fund Renaissance Technologies and rebranded as Cambridge Analytica, a data firm that has since become synonymous with political scandal and the misuse of private data gathered online. Between 2014 and 2018, Kogan's app and analysis model helped Cambridge Analytica collect data on more than 40 million Facebook users. The personal data was later used by the campaign for Donald Trump, which deployed Facebook ads to influence voter behavior in the 2016 election. Cambridge Analytica has also since been accused of illegally participating in a pro-Brexit campaign in the United Kingdom.
When we learned in 2015 that Cambridge Analytica had bought data from an app developer on Facebook that people had shared it with, we did take action. We took down the app, and we demanded that both the app developer and Cambridge Analytica delete and stop using any data that they had. They told us that they did this. In retrospect, it was clearly a mistake to believe them.
Cambridge Analytica isn't the only company to collect and distribute vast amounts of information about people's private lives. Data brokering, or the practice of gathering and selling data to parties who hope to use it for their own purposes, has become a lucrative industry in an era when many internet users freely share personal details in exchange for online convenience. Every time a user clicks a link, shops online, opens an app, or goes on a walk while carrying a cell phone or smart device, information about that behavior is added to a dossier that in many cases is sold to the highest bidder. The most well-known companies that engage in data brokering, such as Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, largely gather data to sell to marketers who want to create more effective advertisements. However, data brokers have also sold to companies with other goals in mind for the information they purchase. Personal data has been used to create more effective advertisements, to exploit emotional volatility in teenagers, and even to target high-interest loans at low-income families. Collecting and selling data may be disconcerting, but in the United States, it's completely legal. Without stronger legislative protection, consumers and other online users have little hope of preventing their data from being exploited. During a 2018 U.S. Senate hearing on data privacy, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg repeatedly told elected officials that the social media site doesn't sell user data.
I can't be clearer on this topic. We don't sell data. That's not how advertising works.
However, a company doesn't have to sell data directly to third-party companies in order to provide the same services that data brokers do. By not selling its data to third parties, Facebook essentially is able to act as its own data broker and sell advertisers direct access to ideal customer bases.
So the way the ad system works is advertisers can come to us and say, I have a message that I'm trying to reach a certain type of people. They might be interested in something, they might live in a place, and then we help them get that message in front of people.
That practice, along with Facebook's habit of buying digital competitors such as Instagram, has prompted some regulators in both Europe and the United States to express concerns that Facebook and other tech giants have become monopolies that own and profit from the majority of online activities.
You don't think you have a monopoly?
It certainly doesn't feel like that to me.
Even if Facebook wasn't acting as its own data broker, Zuckerberg's comments gloss over the fact that other parties, including Cambridge Analytica, have been able to sell Facebook's data without the company's consent.
In 2015, we heard the report that this developer, Alexander Kogan, had sold data to Cambridge Analytica. That's in violation of our terms.
Zuckerberg likewise failed to mention that a number of other companies scrape user data using games and surveys developed for Facebook. Some of those apps are ultimately owned by Facebook itself, even if they are distributed under a different company name. Since 2014, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple have purchased more than 200 digital companies. Some were bought and shuttered so that they didn't become a future competitor. Others simply continue to operate under a new corporate umbrella. A study published by the 2018 proceedings of the 10th International ACM Web Science Conference found that because of these frequent company acquisitions, most data collected by smartphones ultimately ends up back in the hands of the biggest tech corporations. In particular, Alphabet, the parent company of Google, owned tracking companies associated with 88% of the apps examined by researchers. A significant portion is also routed back to Facebook, Twitter, and Verizon. The same study found that out of nearly 1 million apps examined in the British and American versions of the Google Play Store, 9 out of 10 apps had at least one tracker, a section of code dedicated to tracking user activity. Data can also be harvested through extensions that are downloaded onto internet browsers. When the extensions are downloaded, however, users often unintentionally agree to also sell access to information about anything they did through the browser while the extension was installed. The companies behind the extension can then use the data themselves or sell it to data brokers. Imagine, for example, deciding to search Google for information about managing diabetes after a close family member's diagnosis with the disease. A data company, seeing that search, could match it to any other searches that were performed from that same computer, and then use that information to determine which person likely entered the search. A life insurance company buying the dossier from a data broker could now make the assumption that you have diabetes and require higher premiums as a result. That hypothetical situation isn't too far-fetched. In 2019, New York became the first state to allow life insurance companies to use information entered on social media to determine premiums. In a 2019 joint feature, ProPublica and NPR explained how other online interactions and lifestyle choices can shape someone's healthcare. A woman who buys plus-size clothing, for example, is likely to be marked as someone suffering from depression. Weight, marriage status, race, and other factors can also significantly increase healthcare costs. Even if the data is accurate, the conclusions drawn from it might not be. A married woman isn't more likely to be pregnant than any other woman. But if she's changed her name recently, she's more likely to see her health costs increase in anticipation of future prenatal care. At the moment, there's little that individual users can do to correct inaccurate dossiers created by data brokers. The data is hard to find and is distributed in such a manner that incorrect copies might proliferate, even if the data broker makes every effort to remove inaccuracies from a profile. In some states, consumers have filed lawsuits to force data collectors to correct inaccurate information. A Virginia resident named Thomas Robbins, for example, sued the website Spokeo after he discovered that the site listed him as a 50-year-old married man with children who was working in a technical field, a description that didn't match him at all. Robbins' case was initially escalated to the Supreme Court, which found that Robbins had provided insufficient evidence for his claim that Spokeo's inaccuracies had harmed his ability to get a job. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit eventually ruled in Robbins' favor, but since his case was not taken up again by the Supreme Court, it hasn't resulted in any broader changes in how companies collect, list, and verify information online. Limiting the amount of information data brokers can gather and opting out of services like Spokeo that collect and display information from public records can provide internet users with some amount of protection. However, users who decide to actively opt out of data broker services should know that they may have to repeat the process every few months, as some companies use automatic collection methods to grow their lists. Ultimately, however, the most effective method for limiting data collection is to never go online in the first place. Even then, personal information can still end up in the hands of data brokers through the activity of friends and family. Individual responses cannot address the wider privacy concerns caused by data brokering. Comprehensive legislation could provide users with more online protections and allow them to opt out of any service that might make nefarious use of personal information. But so far, that legislation has not been enacted. For now at least, the data trade is still heating up.